Steering wheel, somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing he's could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRS FC and F1 podcast by Soccer Nerds. I am a soccer nerd. I'm Andre Carlisle, and I'm here with another soccer nerd, Donald Wine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Andre. We're both here in DC, and it's a busy week for us. It's Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi apparently is going to overtake everything that's going on in DC this week. There's nothing really going on in the soccer world or anything, right? No, just a World Cup draw.
Certainly nothing I'm going to try and pay attention to. I know I'm going to see clips online, and I'm going to get annoyed, and I'm just going to try my best to avoid it all because...
I'm going to be there, and I'm going to try to avoid it all, too, so...
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yes, we are here to preview. Donald, it's the last race of the season.
I'm excited and sad, right? It's been a ridiculously fun season to watch for a lot of reasons, but the fact that they've left the coup de grace for the very end, like I'm excited about it, and I'm also like, what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah, I think that last part is definitely the part that we need to discuss the most, and we will absolutely get to it. But before we do all that, let's talk about the circuit itself, because we've done this all season, bar one preview, I believe, maybe two previews, because Carlos has two podiums. And as we discussed in our review of Qatar, when we don't do a preview, Carlos Sainz gets on the podium. So
I guess the rest of our crew is kind of like, hey, we want Carlos to podium again. So they, steered away, and me and Andre said, I don't know. I don't know if we want Carlos to do it again. But
if you listen to the review, you know exactly what happened. Donald and I checked our bank accounts, saw no movement, and said, all right, let's hop on the microphones.
That's right. Looking a little low, Carlos.
So this race is at I love the name of this circuit. Because Yas Marina Circuit, just Yas Marina Circuit. In my head, that's how it's always said every time I read it. I don't know why, but I do know why. I'm ridiculous. I'm online too much, but that's how I always hear it in my head. I've never said it out loud. Now that I have, hopefully it's stuck in your head too. This track is 5.281 kilometers long. That is 3.28 miles. They will do 58 laps around this track. The lap record was set by, remember this guy? Kevin Magnussen, 2024, 1 minute, 25.637 seconds. Donald, tell us about the track a little bit, the DRS zones, and your likes and dislikes.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a really long straight, and you know me, I really like the long straights. There's one that's kind of like a curving straight is the second DRS zone. And then if you look at it, we're skipping ahead to the track shape. It looks like an old school pistol where it like has a long side, it has another semi-long side, and then a bunch of squiggly lines. The start like area, like that first turn, that's a decent straight that's not a DRS zone. I guess they could have made it one, but they chose not to. But it's still going to be a straight where you're going to see some guys try to overtake. And the great thing about it is the start line is kind of at the start as at the beginning of that straight. So they have 200 meters, 250 meters to really gun it before they have to slow down for that first turn.
Yeah, I'm going to co-sign the old school pistol, and I'm also going to say shout out to Arthur Morgan. If you know, you know. But I do like this track. It's not one of my favorites, but I do like it. And one unique thing that I like is the pits. There's that tunnel that they go into to join the track coming out of the pit. I think that's just really cool. It's weird. It's quirky. I don't know if that's like the best way to do it. I feel like there was another way to make this happen because no other track really has a tunnel like this that the drivers have to go through. But I always imagine somebody crashing in there, and then what do they do? Like what happens if there's a crash in that tunnel and nobody can get out of the pits?
It reminds you, it's kind of a cross between Olympic bobsledding, right? With bobsledding, you kind of have the curves, but you have that. Yeah. There's always a curve that's covered, and all of a sudden they kind of appear out of the other side. And the way that it kind of enters the track is like Royal Rumble, where you don't know who's coming out, but you know they're coming through that curtain. And it could be a short guy, it could be a tall guy, it could be a guy who's 500 pounds. We have no idea. So like they kind of disappear, and then all of a sudden especially when you're talking about guys rejoining and kind of the traffic that will ensue in the middle of the pack. It's going to be interesting because you'll see some of those guys pop out, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, there's a car next to me. Wow, I should probably adjust." And so you'll see a couple of those moments. Well, and will it affect the race? Is the question.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point because this may be a dynamic that happens on a couple other tracks as well. I'm kind of thinking of maybe Canada, but drivers coming out of the pits rejoin the track on the left, not the right. Normally, you're just staying out of the way on the right so you can take that turn, but you're like in the middle of almost like a little slaloming section, and drivers are coming out of the pits at lower speeds than you from the left. And so it does get a little bit weird if you get the timing wrong, or if you're just trying to get do that pit to overtake or whatever, or any of that, and making sure you get into a good clean air after a pit stop. It could be really strange in terms of how drivers come together. The other thing I was thinking about with this tunnel is if Yuki Tsunoda happens to outqualify any of the McLarens, or just happens to pit the same time they do, if Christian Horner was still around, he's turning that car sideways, stuck in the tunnel. So Max can make sure that he gets the lead of that race.
What was the name of the boat or the ship that was like sideways in the Suez Canal and blocked the whole canal for weeks? That could be Yuki. And Yuki,
Right.
First of all, he's going to be like, "Oh, the limit's 60 miles an hour." He's like, "I'm going 58." He's going to look around like, "I'm in the tunnel. What are they going to do?" Like, someone's going to be like, "Wait, 3 cars entered the tunnel and 0 came out." That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we don't find out what happens when somebody crashes in the tunnel. But listen, given how close the championship is, which we will talk about in just a second, some shenanigans could be afoot. But let's talk about the tires real quick, because we do like to do some hashtag tire talk in the lead up to these races, because it tends to be kind of important. That was the whole deal in our review for Qatar, is that there was this predetermined limit of how many laps a tire could do, which made sure that teams had to commit to at least 2 stops. McLaren decided to commit to 3 stops because they were being very silly. But that's not in play this time. You're getting kind of a more regular traditional setup. So the compounds are going to be the C3, C4, and C5. They haven't gone a little bonkers. That's what they used last year as well. And let's see, is there anything else we need to know about the tires?
Yeah, I think last year, everyone but Lewis started on the medium tires, and he did the opposite. He started on hard tires, and then when everyone switched to hard for their stop, he did the opposite. I think the only person who came in a second time was Alonso, and the only person, and Magnussen. Magnussen switched to sauce for the last 2 laps to set that lap record that you just talked about. So I think the other thing to note, and we'll get into this a little bit more too, this is the last race for these size tires, because of course in 2026, if you listen to our 2-part series on the regulations that's coming, they're going to have a different size tire next year. So guys, you don't have to save them. Burn them if you got them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do, and it feels like the sauce were kind of eliminated from conversation. But again, in a close race, maybe someone switched to the sauce with 10 laps to go to say, let's go for it.
I've always wondered why McLaren won't try that more often, because they are very good. Like, that's one of their secrets, is they're very good at tire wear. And if they could make a faster tire last a lap or 2 longer, maybe they could find a bit of even more of an advantage. And this might be the time to at least try something new, which is going to be interesting. And like you said, there are several things at the end of this race, and for these tires, and for these cars. This is it. So rejoice, maybe, Lewis Hamilton fans. Rejoice, anybody else who has a driver who's been struggling. Rejoice. We're going to hit the reset button after this race, and all eyes are going to be on 2026. If you haven't checked out our 2026 regs review, check it out. We split it into 2 parts because the changes are that massive. Engine is changing, and how they harvest power as well. 50-50 power split. So we talk about the engine changes and how that will affect everything. And we also talk about the aerodynamic changes, because guess what? DRS is going away. Not us. The actual DRS, the button they press on the track to make the flap go up. That's going away. It's being replaced. So check all that out. All right, Donald, let's get to it, because this is the big thing. McLaren and all their fuckery has kind of given us a gift if we weren't so upset at them, we'd be thankful. But the gift that they've given the casual watcher is that you're going to get a drivers' championship that is coming down to the final race, and it's not manufactured at all. This is legit. Lando, 408 points. Max only 12 points behind. Oscar only 16 points behind. So much can happen between these three. A DNF for any of them changes things, changes the scenarios a ton. But even that, depending on where people place in the race, can change everything as well. So, Donald, you went through this, and I teased this in our review. Please go through all of the scenarios. Well, maybe not all of them because there's about 900 billion, but go through the most likely ones for Max to win, Lando to win, and Oscar to win.
Yeah, well, I think Crofty said after the race in Qatar that it's the first time in like 15 or 16 years that we're heading into the final weekend with more than two drivers having a shot at lifting the trophy as drivers champion. So there was, like, as you mentioned, there's like 9 million scenarios. There's been a couple of flow charts that have done their best to try and break this down. So we've kind of narrowed it down to some of the main ones. The simple path. Everyone loves the simple path. If Lando podiums, Lando wins. It's that simple. If he finishes on the podium, he is your driver's champion. Now, if Max wins and Lando finishes P4 or lower, Max is your champion. Max can also win if he finished second, and if Lando is P8 or lower, and Oscar is P3 or lower. Hope you're staying with me. If Max is P3, Max can also win if Lando was P9 and Oscar is P2 or lower. There's been a couple of tiebreakers. I took those out of it to basically simplify it to that. Now, if Oscar wins, Oscar can win this championship too. If Oscar wins and Lando is P6 or lower, then Oscar wins. If Oscar is P2, he can also win if Lando was P10 or lower and Max is P4 or lower. Every other scenario out there that you can think of, Lando wins. And as I mentioned before, he wins every tiebreaker that's there. There are a couple scenarios where Lando can be tied on points with either Oscar or with Max, but he wins all those tiebreakers. So that is the very simple, or at least the simplest way you can break this down. But again, Lando is in the best position because all he has to do is do what he's done so many times this year. Just get on the podium. If he gets on the podium, he's celebrating more than just being on the podium. He's celebrating being a champion.
So I'm going to ask you this real quick. Tiebreakers is a little bit foreign to me when it comes to F1, and we haven't really been in a situation where we've needed to talk about them in years. Like you said, Crofty was talking about has been 15. And sorry, I can't claim to be the sort of historian that was watching F1 as intently as I'm watching it now 15 years ago. So I don't know what the tiebreakers actually are. Do you know what the tiebreakers are?
Yeah, so let's take the most, I guess, the simplest one that can actually happen. That, I believe, is if Max is P2 and Lando was P7. Not like 7 or lower, but if he's P7 and Max is P2, they would be tied, I believe, at 414 points. It then goes to the number of second place finishes that you have, which Lando has more of. So Lando wins that tiebreaker. Again, there's another one, I believe, involving Lando and Oscar. And again, it would go to the second place ones because every time Oscar won a race, Lando was probably P2 or right around there. So
it's not race wins.
Race wins, I believe. I think race wins is the first one.
Okay.
But I think if that were to happen, I think they're tied. I think that's what it is. I didn't dive too much into the tiebreakers because they basically said Lando wins them all, so there was no need to kind of belabor them. But I do know that second place finishes is like that first thing that would be the tiebreaker that comes into question should they tie on points.
Okay, got you. Because I was wondering about that, and I guess it makes sense if you're looking at a tiebreaker. Because I think, and by the way, this just tells you how badly McLaren messed up this whole thing. I think all three of them have 7 wins on the season.
Yes, that's why that would normally be the first tiebreaker, and the only tiebreakers that come into play is if none of them win. Right. So that's where you kind of get the math out, and that would be the first one. They're all tied. You then go to second place. I think after that, it would be third place finishes, which I believe Lando would win those as well. I didn't count them, but everyone who has done all the tiebreakers, all these possible computations have basically said if there's a tie between Lando and someone else, Lando wins that tiebreaker.
All right. Well, I appreciate you going through that because I was like, this will be interesting if they're all tied in wins. And obviously, if anybody wins, then you don't need the tiebreaker. But if you don't and the math gets weird, now we understand. So thank you. That's a little bit bonkers. We'll talk a little bit later about if we think Lando or Oscar is going to actually do it. But we're going to save that because we got a little yelly / I got a little yelly our last episode, and I feel it bubbling already. So we're just gonna move on and talk about the other battle. There's a battle for 6th. What do you get for 6th? Nothing. A little bit of pride, that's about it. But this battle for 6th is a little bit more than that because it's between Lewis Hamilton, who left Mercedes to go to Ferrari, and Kimi Antonelli, who came up as a teenager to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. Right now, Lewis has that 6th place spot by only 2 points, 152. Kimi has been doing really well the past few weeks. He's at 150. If he gets those points over Lewis, and I believe in terms of tiebreakers, I'm not going to ask you to go through these scenarios, but Lewis ain't been on the podium at all, and Kimi's got a couple podiums, so I'm going to assume any of these tiebreakers are going to be owned by Kimi. So Lewis, basically, you got to beat him and score points.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't have to score points if he doesn't score points, but you know what I mean.
Right. But I think that race for 6th wouldn't be as interesting if it wasn't set up the way you set it up, right?
Right.
Like Lewis going to Ferrari and basically in part because they wanted to bring up Kimi and they needed a spot, and they didn't want to re-sign Lewis for a long-term deal. So Lewis got his long-term deal. Kimi gets brought up to replace him. And so, and I think also it's interesting because it's not like it's a rivalry between them. Like Kimi's talking about how Lewis has all the time been like, checking in on him and giving him pointers and just he's been able to be there as kind of a guide. And so it's not a rivalry of sorts, but that is a major, I guess, cloud above it, right? The fact that these two guys are going to go hand in hand when they're directly competing against each other. And of course, Ferrari versus Mercedes. Mercedes is trying, as we go to the constructors, they're trying to hold on to number 2. So Kimi needs those points, not just for himself, but for his team to try and hold off Red Bull. Because Max is going to go for it all, and that's potentially 25 points that could be added to their total alongside whatever Yuki might get. So it's an interesting proposition here, in the battle for 6th. And I think the last thing I'll say is those two have been kind of, in some of these races, been going at each other, right? They've been, for 6th or 5th or 4th or what have you. They have been in direct, battles with each other on the racetrack, and they've been pretty exciting. So it's not just the top that we have to look at, it's all these other ones that are going to kind of trickle out and decide whether these teams get more wind tunnel time or more money or more opportunities to make changes to their car. So
Yeah, I'm ready for this year to be over for Lewis. If Lewis wanted to step aside and give the Ferrari reserve driver, isn't it Joe? Just get Joe in the car. Who cares? Go ahead, man. Go ahead. You were done dirty by Sauber.
My neck, my back,
right? Exactly. He's what LeBron recently say? He just like,
my
hey
sciatica.
man, I'm old. Like I wake up with stuff.
Acting up.
Yeah, you just wake up with ailments, and I can feel him. Like that's the most relatable LeBron has ever been. I feel like Lewis can pull that out. Just wake up and be like, guys, guess what? Can't do it. Get Joe in the car. It's fine. Just give me to 2026 and let this season be over with. One last thing we got to talk about when it comes to the battles that will be decided on this final weekend of the season, of the 2025 season, is a mid-table scrap. 6th through 9th is only separated by 24 points. Now, obviously, it doesn't sound like a ton of points, but when you're kind of only scrapping for the points available from maybe 5 or 6 through 10th, there aren't that many points that can make a difference. But because it is so tight, you could see a lot of shuffling in between these teams. So let's go from the top down, 6th through 9th. In 6th right now is Racing Bulls with 92 points. They might be secure unless Aston Martin does something silly and gets up into that top top 5 to really put them under pressure in terms of points. Aston Martin is 12 points behind them at 80. But 7 points behind Aston Martin is Haas with 73. Now, Ollie's been cooking. I'm so disappointed in the way his Qatar went because I think he was in line to pick up some points and it could have been even closer. But they're also got to watch their back because only 5 points behind Haas is Sauber with 68. So there are some teams that are very, very close. Unless you see some sort of weird, like Alpine in Brazil last year, double podium, you're not going to see somebody jump all the way, like Sauber to jump all the way up, ahead of Racing Bulls. But you could see plenty of shifting in between this pack. And I think that part is going to be very, very interesting to watch, particularly given that we got some driver news that we also need to talk about at some point on this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that last year, right? The scrap for like 5th and 6th and how it came down to Alpine and the double podium. And then I think Gasly did really well the very last week to secure 6th. And this is a big deal. And we just saw what it means last week to Williams to clinch 5th by, again, Sainz getting on the podium once again. A podium will change all of this. And if I'm thinking correctly, Racing Bulls has a podium. Haas has a podium, right? Ocon. Am I thinking right? Oh, I'm sorry. Hulkenberg has one.
Yeah, Hulkenberg
has one.
Yeah.
Aston Martin does not. Haas does not.
Yeah, Haas has a P4 from Ollie, but that's as close as they've gotten.
That's correct. Right, and that's their highest finish. They've never had a podium. Thank you. But again, Ollie has shown that he can do that. Ocon did it last year. He was part of the Alpine double podium over there. So you have 2 drivers that are capable of doing it. And I think all of these Racing Bulls, and Aston Martin, Haas, and Sauber, maybe not Racing Bulls because we'll talk about, we've talked about how they may be under quote orders to kind of help out Max a little bit. But Aston Martin and Haas and Kick Sauber could be like, yo, we got a car that's not maybe going to win, but we can seriously affect this championship by just being in the mix. And if Alonso was in P4 and holding off a Lando or an Oscar, he's going to do that for as many laps as the car will allow him to do it. And so, it's interesting for them, but also, again, one podium can change all of that, and it could determine who is the champion.
And I love a weird podium, so I would love a weird podium in the last race of the season. I think get Haas on the podium. I think Ollie has deserved it this season. I would love to see that. Oh,
I got one thing that I want to propose to you because I've seen it everywhere. There is one scenario, and it's about McLaren, and it's about Oscar Piastri. If we're talking about the Drivers' Championship and one of these teams, right? Let's say Max is in first. Someone else is in second. Oscar is in third. Lando's in fourth. Does McLaren give him Oscar the order, to let Lando through so that one of them can win the title? Or does Oscar say, fuck it, both of us going down?
We talked about this on the review and we were like, no, we're going to save it for the preview. Oh man, I think they ask because you have to. Like, you have to show Lando that you tried. Now, obviously, Lando and Oscar shouldn't even be in this position. But
Correct.
If it comes down to it, and I actually hope it does. Like, that's one of these things, and not to spoil my prediction, but this is something that I really want to see because, they deserve to be put in this situation where they finally have to say, sorry, Oscar, we have to say the quiet part out loud now. Like, you're the number 2. We need you to move over so that our guy can win the Drivers' Championship. I want all that I want them to be forced into it. And what I think will happen and what should happen is Oscar should say, no, y'all put us in this situation. This is the situation you've deserved. But we both had a fair shot. We both could have had a fair shot at this championship. Again, they won the Constructors' Championship months ago.
2 months ago.
Months ago. Not a month. Months ago. At this Drivers' Championship, it should just be those 2 scrapping. Like, if it came down to it, it should just be those 2. But they've let Max get into it because of their silliness. And so, to me, Oscar should just be like, y'all made the bed, sleep.
So, I agree with you. I think that I think that Zach Brown and the crew would ask, because I've asked billionaires for $1 billion. I know the answer is no, but I'm gonna ask. And the funny thing is, I think that Oscar would say yes. I don't think he should, but I feel like at this point he's like, because look, when you're kind of resigned to what you already knew, it almost is like the killer blow for them to be like, you didn't get this, I gave it to you, right? And you can kind of hold that and then be like, next year, I'm asking for all my favors back, all of like Baku,
You know what?
all like every favor that he has been asked to do this entire season, the switchbacks, the giving up positions, and always was him, right? Always was him giving up position. Like maybe he's like, look, we won it, but when it comes to the drivers, he ain't win it. I gave it to him because you asked me to be nice and give it to him. So next year, I'm going to ask for a whole lot more. This comes with, like it. I'm giving you, some money here, but we get an interest on the back end.
Yeah, no, I actually that is the more strategic thing to do, is you just go ahead and do it, and basically you played the team game right up until the end. And even though your own title charge got derailed by your own team, you can now say, all right, Lando's got his. Next season, different story. All right?
Mhm.
Different story. Don't ask me to do nothing else. Different story. I'm out for myself next year, and y'all gonna be cool with it. So you know what? Oscar's kind of calm, and I think he's pretty strategic. So you're probably right. That's what he do. I'm just a fan of mess. I just want to see the mess of him saying no.
And the funny thing is as fans, like I'm not a McLaren fan. Like I like Oscar. I don't mind Lando, but like in the case of Oscar, I'm like, yo, he wins either way, right? If he says no, all the fans are like, yeah, you damn right, you should say no. If you use my scenario and he says yes because he's like, yo, I gave this to you and now you're going to give me something next year, I think all the fans be like, did you see the power play that my man just pulled on the last turn of the season? Like that is some G shit right there if he does that. But again, he hopefully will not be in that position, because I don't even want that scenario to play out, because I don't want him to be put in that position. But it's a huge move. It's a power move. And I think the fans will understand either way.
No, McLaren deserves him to be put in. McLaren deserves to be put in that position. He doesn't. I agree with you, but McLaren deserves to be put in that position. The other caveat is, though, there ain't no guarantees next year. That car could be P5 at best, right? Like you have no idea how any of these teams are going to come out the gates and nail the. And again, I do think like you're going to see a team that looks like, oh, they nailed it, they're on top. And then as the season progresses, you're going to see other teams develop and get closer, or they're going to be like, oh, this is the thing we need. And they're going to figure out, with all the brains they pay a bunch of money to back in the factories, they're going to figure out that thing that they're missing and get closer to contention. So I do think that you will see a clear-cut team ahead, but then I think you're going to see a lot of kind of back and forth, because we've already seen it a ton, like following this particular season in and of itself. Some teams great at certain tracks. Some teams great in certain conditions. Some teams not, right? McLaren has been the most consistent, which is why we talk about them having such a lead over everybody, which makes it silly that it's coming down to this final race and Max is involved and not just their two drivers. But McLaren has done a great job, but there's no guarantee that's going to hold over until 2026. We've seen this season where Mercedes looks unstoppable. Canada, they were great, right? We've seen other teams get on the podium and look really good. We've seen Williams on the podium a couple times. All the weird podium situations with Sauber being on a podium, Racing Bulls being on a podium. So like you can see that track specific and condition specific can change things. And next season, we're going to have no idea who is going to really nail it when it comes to those particular conditions, that particular track, and how well they nail those particular the changes in the regulations. So it's going to be wild.
Just think about last year, right? Like last year, Red Bull was the dominant car. They were coming off that 2023 that was when they were unstoppable.
Yep.
In the first half, it was Red Bull. In the second half, it was McLaren and Ferrari. That were the two fast cars. So, and even down the stretch, right, McLaren like had that middle surge, and then Ferrari had the late surge, and to make it where if they had a half a lap, they probably were the constructors champion. So it's interesting to think about 2026. But again, sure, a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. But man, if he had a power play move over McLaren, I might have to give me a Piastri hat or something just for the chaos.
I do feel sorry for him because he really should be. He shouldn't be in third place heading into this. Like, he should be the one right behind Lando, and then it's just a scrap to see which McLaren driver wins it. That's where he should be. And because they messed up last week at Qatar, which we talked about, check out the review. That's the only reason he's in this position. And so I'd be pissed off if I'm him. And I think he is. All right, let's take a quick break. We got a couple other things to talk about. We're going to jump into some other topics because there's been actually a lot of F1 news that we need to talk about. And then we'll get into our predictions, talk about who we think is going to win the title. We have predictions in here from most of the crew, and we will let y'all know what we think is going to happen. But first, a bit of news. All right, so apparently nobody wanted to really wait until the end of the season. Normally you wait until like everything's settled in terms of drivers' championship and all of that before you make your news so that you can stay in the cycle a little bit longer. But some teams are just like, nope, we're going to give y'all news right now. We don't care. And one of those is Aston Martin. Adrian Newey, who is check out a pod that we did on him going to Aston Martin. He is a legendary car designer. There are all sorts of tales about him and his engineering genius. He can see air. He understands aerodynamics and airflow the best of anybody. He can design. He sits at his little drawing board and comes up with genius designs that gets them a 10th here. Basically, I'm trying to do all this build up when all I need to tell you is that 2023 Red Bull that Max and Red Bull, that was him. That was that dude, all right? He's the one who got in the building and was like, here you go, Max. Get this car that's already the best car on, and you're the best driver, so there it is, done. He's done that throughout his career. I think we said an Adrian Newey car has won 15% of all Grand Prix. I think that was the stat we dropped when we talked about this. So that's how impressive of an engineering mind he is. But Aston Martin has named him team principal, which, as we know, we're seeing a rise in engineers becoming team principals, but that also means that they're backed up by a pretty strong, head of aerodynamics, so a strong engineering team behind them. Adrian Newey kind of is a one-man engineering team. I mean, you still have to have the different pieces of it doing what he wants them to do, but he directs all of that, and that seemed to have been the biggest benefit of getting him in the door. So it seems a little weird to me to saddle him with all the other team principal duties, which are kind of like shaking hands, patting people on the back, going to dinners, hosting things. Like, that's kind of what team principal, like, you're the face of it. And it seems a little weird for that. Donald, am I wrong? How do you feel about this sudden change for Adrian Newey into a role that seems to be a bit more public than I was led to believe he was interested in?
I don't think the public facing part of it is what's weird. It's the fact that, as you mentioned, he's, without a doubt, the most brilliant engineering mind that F1 has ever had. And you're basically telling him to sacrifice that for all the other stuff. And who knows? He could be good at all the other stuff. I'm not going to discount him, his ability to lead a team as the principal. But if your main focus and your main expertise is in this one area, it doesn't feel like the right move is to take you away from that. Even if for a little bit, right? He's still going to do some of it. He's probably as a team principal, he now has the final say on a lot of these engineering decisions, but he has a lot of final say on team strategies and stuff like that. And maybe this is something that we're not privy to, that he's been involved in these conversations already, which gives Aston Martin the confidence that he can just take this over. But it's, from an engineering standpoint, as you mentioned, he just sit in a room and think stuff up. Like, what if the car did this? What if we had this on the car? What if this wing was a little bit, tilted this way and shaped this way? How will it affect the car dynamics? He thinks about that sort of stuff, which most people don't think about. And so if you have someone who's brilliant at that, I would want him to stick around in that and just do that as much as possible. And especially in 2026 with new regulations, figure out when when the car goes wrong, which is not going to be perfect, right? So when you do the testing and all this stuff, Adrian, like, tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're seeing, tell me what might be next to fix this particular issue that we're having. He has less control over that part as the team principal. So I'm kind of curious as to how it'll work, how much he's going to be involved in all these different things, or if it's just he's going to call the shots on game day and he's still going to be in the engineering room. So that's the most puzzling part of this, is how how his time is going to be divided.
Yeah, I think that's the thing and I think you nailed it with him. Are they going to risk stretching him too thin? Because in order to get the maximum advantage from having a guy like Adrian Newey, you need him to be fully focused on just designing the hell out of that car. And if he's got other duties he has to attend to, even if they're minor, but there just could be more people to manage, more decisions to make, and you're just pulling him away from doing the thing that he really loves to do. But apparently this all came because there's been a little bit of a power struggle, a little bit of combativeness. I couldn't even say the word, at the top of Aston Martin with Andy Cowell, who was the team principal. Apparently him and Newey didn't really get along. Apparently Andy Cowell's really good on the engine side, and so he's got his perspective. And obviously, as we know, Adrian is very much the body work, the aerodynamics genius as well. But he also is a very good engineer and other things. That brain does extend beyond that. And so they came at a kind of like where Aston Martin had to choose. And so they chose Adrian Newey because they gave him a ton of money and said, hey, we can't risk this dude walking. He's a rare genius in the sport. So they made him team principal. It's going to be part of an extension of this, how it was reported, as part of an extension of his role as managing technical partner. So he was already the managing technical partner. Now he's also that and the team principal. And Andy Cowell is going to be the chief strategy officer. So he looks like he's going to be overseeing maybe some of the strategy developments and what they do on like race days. But also he's really good with the engine department as well. So he'll probably be working closely with Honda, who's going to be manufacturing their engines too. So interesting split, and already interesting that they didn't even make it to January 1, 2026 and had to shake things up already. I don't know what that says, but it seems a little more unstable than I would like, even though you have really good people in the building. If they're not getting along, that can be interesting.
I mean, it shows that there was some struggle that whoever, right? I don't know if it involves Daddy Stroll, but at least to the point where somebody said, look, this can't wait. We got to fix this now. We got to announce it, put everybody on the same page. And maybe it's for them a way to kind of usher into the next year. Because as we just mentioned, they haven't had a great year. They're fighting in that 6 to 9 battle. They want to be in the top 4. They want to have guys who are scoring points on a weekly basis, and they have Lance Stroll. So that you can't have both. So I think when it comes down to it, they need to. They probably felt they needed to get in a room, hash all that out, announce it now, and that way they have a set, clear path into 2026, and it involves Adrian Newey calling the shots.
Speaking of calling the shots, do you think this may have been a way for him to get a little bit more power to be like, hey, y'all, Lance got to get up out of here?
Daddy Stroll's still cutting the checks, right? So
Fair point.
I think Lance would go on Dancing with the Stars, and Daddy Stroll would be like, "That's great. Race is at 6, so be here by 4."
Yeah, I'm sitting in the PJ. Make sure you're at the airport.
Make sure you're there. Yeah.
All right, we got another news item to talk about because Red Bull and Racing Bulls. I still think this whole 2 teams on the grid thing is somebody need to look into that. But this is what they got, and this is fine. But this is what they do. So we've got 2 teams. It's basically like if you've ever done like the FIFA game back in the day, now EAFC, and you're at lower divisions, you'll see like there's a Villarreal like B team or Barcelona B team or whatever. This is basically what it's like, except that like those teams can't be legally, they can't be in the same division. So there's always one that's going to be lower. But now what you have is you have in the same formula, F1, these teams can exist together, and it just feels really weird. But anyway, they're shaking up their drivers. And it's kind of sad news to report. One happy news to report, but some sad news to report. So for the main team, Red Bull Racing, obviously Max Verstappen made that decision a long time ago. but his teammate is not going to be Yuki Tsunoda in 2026. It is going to be Isaac Hadjar, which I think is really cool, especially given how his F1 career started at its very first race, which we'll talk about. But Racing Bulls also is getting a bit of a shakeup. So because Hadjar is leaving Racing Bulls to get promoted to the senior Red Bull team, Liam Lawson is getting a new teammate. That is going to be Arvid Lindblad, who I believe is still a teenager. Will still be a teenager. I think he turned 18 this past like a couple months ago. I think in August. He's been one of the he's been kind of like Red Bull's Kimi Antonelli, so to speak. Like he's been in their driver system for a little while. They're very, very high on him. They actually think he's the actual true next successor to Max Verstappen when that time comes. He just needs to build up his experience. And so he was in F2 this previous season. Started off pretty strong, but then had some issues toward the end. Didn't end up winning that championship, but still showed enough to be given this chance at Racing Bulls now. And it's very interesting to see how he's going to get on, because it's a great opportunity for him, but you also know that Red Bull can do some weird things with their drivers. The saddest part of all this means Yuki Tsunoda gone off the grid. This is the whole thing we were sad about when he got that. We got on the podcast here, and just about all of us were like, Yuki, are you sure? This could very well lead to you not having a seat in 2026. And here we are. That's exactly what happened. And that really sucks. Apparently, he's going to be the Red Bull tester reserve driver next season. Donald, how do you feel about all of these moves?
Conflicted. We really like Isak. And we like, again, as you mentioned, he started in the worst way possible his F1 career, and has climbed back and really been a guy that has competed in a lot of these races in qualifying and in the actual Grand Prix.
When you say worst way possible, for people who don't know, can you just explain? Because I think like people could think, oh, he got into a crash on like the first lap or something. It's even worse than that.
No, he got in a crash on the formation lap of the very first race of the season. He didn't even make it to the starting line. And he was already out of the race, to the point where they had to delay the race to get his car out of there. And so, I mean, it was the worst of the worst. He was being consoled by Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's dad, before the race even started. And everyone was basically signing his death warrant at that point. And he's climbed out of that. And not only that, now he's getting the promotion to Red Bull, to which I say, Isak, ask for the contract and let them know that there's a typo, that you misspelled your name or something, and you need a fresh, clean copy. And then they'll rip that copy up and give you a fresh, clean copy. And then you take that copy and you burn it and you run. Because that's what Yuki should have done. And I think the one thing that grinds my gears about Yuki being pulled is because we kind of heard about Lindblad for a while, right? They were trying to figure out a way to get a waiver for him to race before he turned 18. And I believe they got it, but they still didn't make this move. They are the last two teams to make a move. So 2026 grid is set, including Cadillac and Kicksauber moving to Audi. If they had done this in August with everybody else, I believe Yuki could have found another team. And so this is kind of what they do, right? Like they did it with Liam. They did it with Isak last year, like holding him back. They've done it now with Yuki, with just holding him to the last minute and making sure everybody else is filled and be like, you're out. And so that's what pisses me off about it. Again, it's not Hadjar's fault. I think he's earned the promotion. I just wish it wasn't with Red Bull. Everyone knows how that second seat has worked over the last 8, 9, 10 years with Red Bull. There's been, and hopefully Isak can get the most out of that car in a year where everybody's getting a new car. But of course, Red Bull is trying to engineer this so that Max can get back atop of the world championship. And so that's what really what is really painful about this, is that Yuki probably could have landed with somebody else. Again, maybe like a, Aston Martin, who Adrian Newey would say, hey, we got Honda, come on through. Fernando's, 45, 46 now. Like maybe he's on the tail end, and at least if you're going to be a test driver, do it over here, because a seat will open up for you and you will get it. And who knows? at some point either Stroll or they're going to have to make a change at Aston Martin at some point. They're not riding with those two drivers for the next decade. Yuki could have been that guy, and probably been more wanted is probably the best way to describe it than it feels like he is at Red Bull.
Yeah, I think it's been a really tough one, and I respect Yuki's, competitive spirit. He was just like, "Yeah, I want that car. It's faster." My guy, no, it is not, because apparently it's all relative, and if you can't control that car, they're giving you're several specs behind. Your parts are going to max because he needs spare parts before you get the new stuff. Like all the little decisions that are made, and maybe this is different. Maybe this will be Lauren Mecky's first season as a full in charge of Red Bull and the way they actually overseeing how they put out two cars and the development schedule both those cars are on. They're still going to prioritize Max, because why wouldn't you? But there's no reason for that second car to be so behind. And so we'll see what happens next season with Isaac. But if I'm him, I need some of that contract language to be like, listen, I can't be 3 specs behind when it comes to the car. Like, I can't just be driving like the junkyard version of this car just so Max can have all the new shiny parts. So we'll see. And obviously, who knows? Can you even do that with Red Bull? Will they even say, okay, sure, you've been great? I am kind of with you. The timing really sucks. I think Yuki could have been somewhere else. It's not like there's been a ton of driver movement, but if teams know that a driver with the record of Yuki, who can be very good, he was performing very well with Racing Bulls before he went to Red Bull. And if he was out there, somebody might say, yeah. And I do think it makes all the sense in the world for him to go to Aston Martin. I think that driver lineup needs to change. If you're going to put an Adrian Newey car out there, if you're going to invest all that money, you need drivers going to extract a lot more out of it than what Lance Stroll can do consistently. And then Fernando Alonso is great, but even he's like, hey, I'm old. Like, I get tired. All this travel is rough on me. Like you said, he ain't going to stick around for long. So they need to find out who their number one driver is going to be. And I think you lure another driver over and Yuki, and you have a much stronger lineup than maybe what you had week to week than maybe what you have right now. And if you're going to maximize the car that Adrian Newey is going to be able to design for you, that's what you need to do. Last note I have on this is I want to talk about the Hajar thing, because I wanted to describe to people exactly what happened to him, because there was a whole conversation that happened in the wake of that about, oh, he's crying. You have to be tougher than that, blah, blah, blah. And you saw the response and what Anthony Hamilton did. Arm around the shoulder. I know how you feel, kid. Let it out. This is rock bottom, but so much better than here. Like, you need that pep talk. You need to understand. Like, it's not wrong to go through those emotions. It's important. They're emotions. You got them for a reason. You got to let them go. You got to feel them, and then you got to do it. So all the people who are talking shit, now look. Right, he's turned things around. He's got on the podium. He's consistently outperformed Liam Lawson. He's had a really, really good rookie season. And like you said, he has earned that seat. I just hope Red Bull don't do what they do and fuck up that second seat to now it looks like he's going to be crying again.
Look, if he was on a different team, I feel like we will be celebrating this more for what it means for the team. We're celebrating this because of what it means for him. Like, this is what he wants. He wants to be on that top thing. And again, at a certain point, Max has done this whole thing and we don't believe him, but he's done that whole, in 2027, 28, when my contract runs out, I might just go do something else. I'm not sticking around for 7 titles. We don't believe him. No. But again, this would, in theory, set up Isaac to be the number one driver if and when Max leave. And again, it's not just that he flirted with leaving the sport; he flirted with leaving Red Bull for most of this year too. So it's an interesting thing, and it's a great thing for him.
Yeah,
that's where it ends, because we want to make sure that Red Bull is doing right by him, and we have years of evidence that they won't do right by anybody who is in that second car.
Yeah. And honestly, his turn as the man could come as soon as 2027, because if they don't get those regulations right and somebody else does, Max is gone. So we will see. Last bit of news before we get into our predictions. Cadillac. We got some news from Cadillac. They're going to unveil their livery, what they're going to be driving around tracks in, which I'm very excited to see. And I'm actually really mad we're not getting that event that they had, that F-175 event that they did that all the people in Europe hated and all the Americans were like, hell yeah, this is how you do it. I'm mad they canceled that. But apparently each team is scheduling their livery reviews or reveals and are going to do all of that fun extravaganza stuff that they do, Cadillac is going to unveil theirs during the Super Bowl. That's a flex.
Hell yeah. This is some American shit. This is some Detroit shit. And as someone who's from the Motor City, I am all for this. Bad Bunny and
Yes.
Cadillac liveries at the Super Bowl. Give me all of it. All I need now is for my Detroit Lions to somehow turn around and make it to the Super Bowl, which will never happen in my lifetime, but I can still dream. This is really cool. And I think, again, we've talked about their selection of Checo and Bottas as their drivers. It feels like they are hitting home run after home run, and this is another home run of a decision, and they're doing it at a football game. So like this is really big of them, and it shows the myth, I guess the attentiveness that they're doing, the detail that they're paying attention to when it comes to how they unveil this. I think they've talked about the colors of the car. I think like silver, black, red are going to be part of livery, but how it looks on the track, obviously. And here's the thing: look, my dad built Cadillacs, right? He was in charge of Cadillac for the plant for a long time. They love them some Cadillacs, and how it is built makes all the difference in the world. How they, the attention they put to that is something that they want. They want a Cadillac to come off the line and you go, that's a fine looking automobile.
Yeah.
I have no doubt they're going to do the same thing with this car.
I really hope they do. I'm excited to see the livery. Like I said, I want to see the pink Cadillac with the fins on it. Who cares about aerodynamics? Just do the thing.
It may not even have to be like for every race, but like, how they do the special liveries for certain
absolutely.
ones. If they came to Miami and they did a pink Cadillac.
Oh, hell yeah. They got to.
Come on now.
They got to.
Come on now.
But yeah, I can't wait to see that. The only thing that I think is going to be funny, like I said in the group chat, I might actually watch the Super Bowl this time because like I think people are going to be they're already mad about Bad Bunny. Now they're going to have to care about F1. They're going to be so confused of what's happening in the middle of my football. What is happening?
And it makes even more sense because this is the last week, RIP, this is the last week on ESPN. And if you remember, the Super Bowl halftime show is produced by Apple. So that whole thing, and Apple was probably, very, very receptive to Cadillac saying, hey, can we introduce our car during this? They were like, absolutely. Do that right here for the American audience.
Yeah. Just another way to promote what the season next year.
What if Bad Bunny came out driving the car?
Listen, if the Cadillac is part of Bad Bunny's
product
performance, the mic drop moment, it just like that. Like, you know what? They need to start the season with 50 points, 50 constructors points. I don't care if that's what they do. You get a bonus because that would be amazing. All right, let's get into predictions. Okay, it is the final race of 2025. So much to be decided. So we are going to do our podium predictions. We are going to do our constructor scrap, which is always choosing who will get the most points as a constructor, who will get the least points as a constructor, with the caveat being that you can't choose the top or the bottom team. So that's McLaren, obviously, and also Alpine, obviously, at the bottom. And then we'll tell you when to watch everything with some interesting times that things are going to be on TV. So I will let you know when all of that is. So, Donald, I'm going to save us for last because we have had the crew here who is not on the podcast write in their prediction. So this is the podium predictions, and we're adding an addendum here because obviously we have a title fight for the Drivers' Championship. So the caveat is who wins the title is the additional question this week. Kyle says Oscar Piastri is winning the race. George Russell is second. Lando Norris is third. And if it finishes like that, Lando will win the title. Megan won last time on Delulu Island. You can always, Megan got to have a condo, duplex, everything on Delulu Island because she just lives there forever. She acts like one last time, but she ain't never leave.
Hey, send us no invite to the house either.
she doesn't ever leave Delulu Island. So, it's all good. She's got Oscar winning. She has George second, Charles third, which means she has Oscar winning the title. Deepti has Max first, Oscar second, and Kimi Antonelli third, which would give Max the title.
Ooh.
Donald, who you got?
I thought Diti was going to pick her boy Oscar, so I was going to transfer my Delulu-ness to Team Oscar for a week. I have Oscar winning this race. I have George finishing second. I have Max finishing third. And down in P6, due to some chaos, I have Lando, which would give Oscar the title.
You know what? I love it. I love it. I love it so much. I'm kind of there with you. I've got Oscar winning the race. I've got George P2, and I've got Carlos Sainz finishing the year out with his third podium for Williams. And yeah, I want to see Oscar win the title. I feel like the title should be his, and I just think it would be the most fair result at this point, because if you add up all the points that he had to give up, even remember that time when they let Lando do a one stop instead of him, and Lando ended up winning that race. You take all those points that he's had to hand over either through strategy or through team order or through whatever. Yeah, to me, the universe needs to right this wrong. I want to see Oscar getting that title, winning this race, getting that title. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what I want to see. Let's go to the constructor scrap. Most and least points. Again, I'll do everybody who is not here first. So Kyle says most points, Mercedes. Least points, Sauber. How dare he? Megan says most points, Mercedes. Least points, Aston Martin. Deepty, most points, Mercedes. Got a lot of belief in Mercedes. Deepty says least points is Haas. Donald, who you got?
I have Mercedes for the most, and I also, like Megan, have Aston Martin for the least.
Copy, paste. That is exactly mine as well. I think Kimmy's probably going to be like P4 or something. And as I said, I got George on the podium. So that would give Mercedes the points. And Aston Martin, I think they qualify strong again, but I don't think they in the race, they don't have the race pace. So I think that, and also I think more than the race pace, I think Fernando just going to be wanting to play games. Like that's how he's going to engage himself. He's old. He's bored. This is a long ass season. The only thing that's going to get him through this race is being a little shit and being able to affect the drivers' championship in whatever way he can. But I think that also means that he's going to be driving slow as hell. So I don't expect a whole lot of points for Aston Martin, and obviously Lance Stroll is Lance Stroll and just wants to dance. All right, here's when to watch everything. Free practice 1 is Friday at 4:25 a.m. Eastern time. Get up for that. I won't be awake, but go for it. ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN Plus. Free practice 2 is a little bit more reasonable. 8 a.m. ESPNU, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN Plus. Free practice 3 is Saturday morning at 5:25 a.m. ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN Plus. Qualifying. Wake up on Saturday and watch some qualifying. 8:55 a.m. on Saturday. ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN Plus, and then the Grand Prix. Get up on Sunday morning. You're going to want to watch it live. There will be replays at 5 p.m. on Sunday, 11:30 p.m. as well, and on Monday at 3:30 a.m. for some reason. But you will want to watch this live Sunday, 7:55 a.m. It's on the big ESPN channel, the main one, also ESPN Plus and ESPN Deportes. That is your F1 schedule for the final race of the season. Donald, we talked about a lot. We probably still didn't get to everything. Give me on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited versus how frustrated are you? So this isn't like only about you being excited. Like 1 is deeply frustrated. 10 is like, I'm excited. Where are you on that scale? Because I'm like, we started off saying we're a little bit conflicted about this weekend because we shouldn't really be in this position, but it also is exciting. So where are you?
I'm at an 8.
Okay,
so
you're more excited than frustrated.
More excited than frustrated because I think my frustration was let out in the review of Qatar. So now that the frustration has been let out and I've aired my grievances with McLaren, I'm looking forward to a really good race and the drama of a last final race where multiple things are in play. That is what a lot of people sign on for. I know some people want their driver to win the race by June. That's never going to happen. So if you have these last minute battles, these last week battles, it's hard to not get up and be excited about it.
You know what? That's fair. And you almost convinced me, but I'm at a 4. I'm more frustrated than I am excited, only because I think I'm going to be annoyed. Like, the only result that's going to make me happy is Oscar winning both the race and the championship. If Lando wins, I'm like, annoying. Like, that's going to be frustrating because it seems like it will have been orchestrated throughout the season so that he could. And if no McLaren wins and it's Max, that's going to be doubly frustrating, not only because he's been a villain for so long, and also this is the site of the famous Abu Dhabi 2021, and him winning his 5th there will be very frustrating. But like, we shouldn't be here. But again, that's just me. That's how I feel. But I do think it is fascinating that we are here, that we do have a final race of the season, especially given how the season felt like it was built up to where this is going to be one of the best F1 seasons. And then it didn't happen like that immediately. McLaren dominated and people were like, what happened to Ferrari? Max and Red Bull are struggling. What's going on? This just looks like it's going to be a McLaren walk. Now, McLaren should have walked the entire season. They made silly decisions, but it does mean that for this isolated event, we do get something interesting. And I don't want to downplay that because I do think this is going to be a historic weekend in F1. You don't often get things coming down to the final race of the season. So that is really cool. Like what Max won last season at Las Vegas. So like, we already had a champion for multiple races after that. So this is unique, but it's also it's not manufactured in the way that like artificial, but just a bunch of unseriousness led us here. And I can't ignore that.
Based on the results, I reserve the right to go full Elmo versus Rocco on the review.
Fair enough. And yes, stay tuned. We will absolutely review the race and everything that comes out. We'll talk about the winners, the losers, everything. We may even reflect a bit on the season as well. We have a lot of off-season content coming as well because this will be the final race of 2025, but we will be desperately looking forward to 2026 and seeing the new cars and hearing about them in testing and watching them in testing and all of that. Also, Apple has to unleash this new F1 deal, so we'll see how they do that. Are they going to give us live testing? How deep are they going to immerse us into the sport? I think there's a lot that they can do there. I'm hoping that they do it. So there's a lot to get to in the off season, and we will be here to talk about it, but not before we review the final race of the season. So we'll see you then. For Donald, I'm Andre. Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.